April 13th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Roll call, Manager Falk.
Commissioner Stump,
Here.
Commissioner Atwood,
Here.
Commissioner Gray,
Here.
Commissioner Zona,
Here.
Commissioner Wingren,
Here.
Commissioner Goss,
Here.
President Haggis.
Here, can everyone please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? If any residents would like to speak tonight, if you could please sign the book at the podium. Thank you. First resident, Angela? Angela. Oh, Angela, sorry. Just name and address for the record, please.
My name is Angela Houston, 678 Cedardale Drive, North Huntington. I've been a resident here since 1987. Members of the board, ladies, gentlemen, officers. When I moved here in 87, we didn't have a large amount of kids here, but now we have a large amount of kids. With the 7 schools that we have over 5,000 kids. Out of these 5,000 kids, we have no movie theater anymore, no swimming pools, no place for the kids to play ping pong or play pool on weekends. What I'm saying is we need a rec center. We have, oddly enough, we have 20 bars where you can go to bars or drink. We have over 30 banks. We have 11 parks, which they are listed online. We have 8 recreation centers, which they are listed online. No movie theater, 7 schools, over 5,000 kids. With this, we do have a youth police department, a youth police camp during the summertime, and we have a junior firefighters for 14 to 17. But for those kids who are not 14 to 17 or don't have a ping pong table or a pool table, or their parents can't go down to the park all the time, or their parents can't spend the money and drive them out to Monroeville Mall to watch a movie, or Westmoreland Mall to watch a movie, which some of you have been there, you know it's very expensive. What I'm saying is, we don't even have a YMCA. Closest YMCA is Greensburg. The kids need some place to go in the summertime. The kids need some place to go after school. I'm not saying that they don't do their homework, which he'll tell you that's my son. He does do his homework. And he's in activities at school. He's in a choir at school. But if he doesn't do activities in the school when he gets home, they have no place to go. I admit some of the parks, they do clean them up. They come by, they dump the trash cans and stuff like that. But it's like if there's nobody there to maintain or somebody say, hey, let's get a game together. I'm 65 years old. Grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. We had Boys Town. We had Girls Town. We had people at Boys Town and Girls Town that got games together. Put up lists on the wall where if you want to play ball, you can come and play ball. If you want to learn how the girls, not saying just girls, because now things have changed, boys and girls learn how to cook. Boys and girls learn how to do mechanics. We have nothing like that. When I was in the military, I spent 20 years in the military, retired military. I did 13 years with the state, retired with the state, worked with juveniles, and I worked forensics. Every military installation I went to in the military had a rec center. I'm not saying our kids didn't get in trouble, but they always had some place to go. At these rec centers, there was dances, there was bingo, there was high school students who were there where if a kid needed help in math or English, you could sign up and there was somebody there who volunteered to help out. We have an empty church up on Cedardale Drive, Laurel Avenue, that's sitting empty now because the people that are there are no longer there. We have an empty movie theater that is not being used, where the Hills department store used to be at. It's sitting there not being used. I'm quite sure there's other buildings here in North Huntington and Irwin, as they call it, North Huntington and Irwin combined, that there are buildings that can be used for the kids. And I'm quite sure there are lots of volunteers. I'm retired. I sit at home and, watch Let's Make a Deal and Price is Right in the morning and time out. Okay, this is Wednesday, I clean the bathroom today. This is Tuesday, I clean the kitchen today. Yeah, I'll volunteer a couple times during the week. I've also volunteered, as Mr. Russo will tell you, I volunteered to sit in the school parking lot with a security shirt on just to make sure nobody comes in and tries to do anything with our kids. I sit at the bus stop every morning to drop my son off, to make sure nobody does anything with the kids. There's 2 girls that's across the street from where we sit at. The community and the people here have got to help us take care of our kids. And I'm quite sure, and no, I have not checked, that there are stores that will volunteer stuff. There are places that will volunteer so much money won't come from the community. They give volunteers for the camp during the summertime for different stuff for the kids for volunteer. If they do that for the kids in the summertime and they know that this is needed, why won't they volunteer stuff for a boys' town or a girls' town or a boys' club or girls' club to help some of the kids stay out of trouble, or help some of the kids have something to do during those months during the summer? The other day I told a buddy of mine, I said, tomorrow's our future. But to them, it's their future. To us, it's another day. We're sitting back looking, and they're looking at things, what they can do. I get tired of my boys sitting there with Atari and, getting that finger exercise. I go out there with my messed up leg, and I take him down to the basketball court every now and then, and he'll tell you it's more every than then, because it gets sore, and I try to get out there with him. But there are parents who would like to get out there, but there's nothing for the kids to do. You as the community leaders have got to get something for our kids. And I do understand that there has been talk about this, but nobody has done anything. I figure, and somebody else has figured, I'm not going to tell you who, that it takes about $40 a year per family for us to do this. And with the empty buildings we have, this can be done. I know some of you are looking at me like, where's the money going to come out? We pass taxes and mills for everything else. Why can't we pass taxes and mills to keep our kids off the street and keep our kids actively doing something during the summertime? Anybody got any questions? I got the papers here of what places are open, how many bars we have, how many schools we have. If you like to look at it, I got it right here. I didn't come empty-handed. I'm a 20-year vet. I know how to come prepared. So, if anybody got any questions, I'm happy if I'll answer to the best of my ability, but we need someplace for our kids to go. I worked juvenile for 6.5 years in Pittsburgh when I got out. I worked juvenile for 5.5 years with the state at Southwest Secure Treatment Facilities. And I worked forensics for the state down at Torrance State Hospital. Some of these kids that I've had when they were small, I got them with the state juvenile facilities, and some of them, I got them with the adult forensics. Let's stop it. It's time for us to put a halt to our kids going through the system. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Thank you for putting in the time and doing that research to present to us. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next resident is John. If you want to come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
John Batis, 11957 McKee Road, North Huntington resident for 12 years now. Not that I wanted to speak about this, but I would like to echo Angelo's thoughts about the rec center. I have a young child, and his points are valid. there's no reason we shouldn't have some sort of, I wouldn't even call it a tax, but for the builders, like Mr. Schuster that has built a lot of buildings in the area, and the other builders that build houses, there should be a fee, something that they contribute towards building or maintaining something, when you, like a permit cost or something for per square foot. If you made it a quarter per square foot or 10 cents per square foot when they build these large houses that are 6,000, 7,000 square feet, you can raise funds to help fund something like this gentleman was just talking about. But that's just my little 2 cents from sitting in the crowd talking about it. I come from a family construction, come from builders, and those are all building costs that they can work around. And there's no reason they can't contribute to that. I live in a neighborhood where there's our parks in the neighborhood. Some of those parks were put in when the developers put those in there in prior towns that I lived in. Anyways, so I'm here to discuss the ongoing issue and echo my thoughts from last month about the stop sign at McKee Road. Commissioner Atwood was at my residence. I saw Public Works, and Dan Miller was there also too. I'm not sure if I saw any of you guys there also, or ladies there too, but it's an ongoing issue. And I'd like to share some other history that I learned from talking to some other neighbors in the area that have lived there longer than I am alive. McKee Road at that intersection had 4 stop signs at one time. That was a 4-way stop sign, or 4-way intersection. Don't know why it was taken out. It was done probably before I was born 30 years ago, 25 years ago. But this resident is willing to come up and give historical value to the area specific to where I live in the township, because her family owned the farm prior to that neighborhood even being around. So she has seen it when her grandfather owned the farm, had a ice rink back there 50 years ago, down where the park is currently right now. The intersection is unsafe, period, to cross. There are neighbors of mine that'll be here that'll testify to that same fact. My father-in-law, who is a Vietnam veteran, tried to cross the street to get my daughter off the bus the other day. A bus nearly ran him over because that bus driver was speeding down the road, obviously doesn't understand the street signs that say yield to pedestrians, even though there's 3 of them there on the way over, laid the horn down. I think Mr. Atwood showed up right after. He just happened to be in the area. This is real life stuff that's happening. I don't really understand why we're still discussing it or have to go through these hoops. I understand there's some bylaws or whatever with the state, things like that about having street signs, but will the state of Pennsylvania take responsibility if a child or an adult gets killed at that intersection? That's my question. That's really what I want to know, is the liability. I do not want to be the one that answers or hears the crash and have to run out there and have to, so sorry, I tried getting a stop sign, but your daughter, your son, your grandfather, your father-in-law is lying on the side of the road for 2 signs. Sorry. It's enough's enough. So I ask again for your consideration to put the stop signs up, period. Thank you.
Thanks. Next resident's Nick. If you can come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Nick Malice. I'm from 11855 Frida Drive. I'm off McKee Road. And I'm retired now 6 years. And one of my duties now is picking up my granddaughter at the bus station, which is what he said, McKee and MacArthur, that zone right there, okay? And I know there's signs up, but it ain't working. They're not working. And what I want you to know is I was crossing legally where I was supposed to on the white strips. I had maybe about 3 steps on the white strips. And this school bus, my son-in-law said bus. It was a school bus, not a long one, those sawed-off ones, okay? And she came to a screeching halt, and she laid down on the horn. No, I didn't say anything, surprisingly, because there's school kids in there. But I just stared at her. And I was in the middle of the road. Well, she wasn't probably not paying attention. So I crossed the street and just watched the vehicles that go by. Nobody listens to them signs. Nobody. Something's got to be changed. Either some kind of bump things in the street along with stop signs or a light. I don't care. I don't care. Can't beat out of bond money. We live in North Huntington. We're supposed to have a buck. So I'm only asking you, and I'm telling you, I thank you, Jason. I respect you because you came right up to me that day. Thank you very much. And just consider it. Consider it. Because I worked in a mill for many years, and nobody listened either until somebody got hurt. And then they corrected it. So let's not go there. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last residence, Lynn, if you can come up and say your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Lynn Clark, 11479 Drop Road. I've been a resident for 60-plus years. Same thing with McKee. I cross that road every day to take my granddaughter to the park, or I wait down at the end of South Whitmore and McKee to get the other two on the bus. And we are now having people drive their children to school. No one is standing waiting for the bus anymore because of the way the cars drive on there. Or the McKee residents have their children being picked up at their doors. It's bad. Yesterday when that happened, and it was a school van, and she just laid on that horn and was yelling, and I came running up from McKee, or from the park, and I thought he had gotten hit. It kind of scared me. And I was trying to cross before that, and I had this young kid come down the road, and I said, "You have to stop for pedestrians." He goes, "Where does it say that?" And I said, "Where it says PEDS." He goes, "What's a ped?" I thought, "You've got to be kidding me." So one thing I do remember with living in that area is we used to have speed bumps on McKee. It really slowed down the traffic. And I was hoping that somebody could find out when they got taken out, or if we can get them back, or a stop sign or something. But I appreciate any help you can give us. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Is there any other residents that would like to speak that didn't get a chance to sign up tonight? All right, not seeing any responses to citizens' input. Angelo talked about a recreation center for the youth in the community.
I appreciate him coming and voicing the need for recreation. I think if I'm not mistaken, Harry, that's in our long-range comp plan.
Yes.
So I think that is being looked at as a possibility. Jason has been an advocate for getting something going as far as a rec center. I'm interested in you said there was an empty church?
Up on Laurel Avenue, right up from where they're building that
It's
apartment.
where Beverly's
There
birthdays
a
used to
church
be.
up there. It's empty now. It
Okay.
was a party center for kids who couldn't have parties, but now it's empty. That's an empty building that sits there. It's right at a location where you have kids from Laurel, Country Hills. There's about 8 or 9 different streets that could benefit from a rec center being right there.
Is that building in fairly good condition, do you know?
I haven't been in there, but the main part that I was in there, it's in really good condition. I was told there's a gym in there. But if there was a church at one time, that means that there is a kitchen in there also. So if people want to give snacks or something for the kids, there's a kitchen there that can suffice having the snacks and stuff in there.
Okay.
And I live about less than a quarter mile from it. I'll walk down in the morning or the afternoon and help hand out the snacks if I have to. Like I said, I do nothing. Well, I take that back. I do something. But we got a lot of vets that probably if I ask, call enough of them, they'll help. But the building is there, it's empty.
So we already have an empty tax exempt piece of property that might have some potential. Can we maybe find out who owns that and inquire?
Sure.
To see if possibly maybe a nonprofit would be interested in running it, or the old church, so.
Because if you wanna set up baseball games, right down the street, there's a park, I don't know what the name of the park, there's a baseball field right down the street on, Crestwood, off to the right. You can't drag cars back there because they got the boats there. But, at one time, there was a swing set, a couple of benches, and a good shaped baseball diamond, in a large area field.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
So we have the facilities.
Well, you had also mentioned Boys Town and Girls Town, and we have had one of the Boy Scouts have come in and given presentations on, he's an Eagle Scout. And so maybe that would be something to look into as well, is maybe to find out, you know, what they're doing. And I know some of the other churches have some activities as well, so, but, thank you for coming in and giving us that
Also, I know
idea.
some of you are thinking about they're building a trampoline place up across from, but what about the kids who can't get to the trampoline place and their parents don't want them walking up there with all that traffic? There's supposed to be trampolines and go-karts in there. You know, okay, it's a place to go, but like I said, what about the kids that the parents don't want their small kids in a place like that? Or they don't have the money to go there, or traffic situation. That's, you know, kids going to a place like that, that's a lot of, kids going in and out of a lot of traffic up there. But where that church sits up there, you know, the community is gonna look out. We've been looking out for years. But I believe since I've been there, there's been, 3 child lorings up there. We, the parents, we patrol that area up there. We're not gonna let it happen.
Excuse me, if I could just chime in on the church over here. That has since been sold to a new property owner, and they did receive an occupancy for a daycare center back in December of '22. So I don't know if they've been operating. I assume that they were, but I can check with our zoning officer tomorrow to see.
At present time, there's nobody in there.
Okay.
Because I look at it every morning.
Okay.
Like I said, it used to be a place where they did parties and stuff, and people bought their donations, and they made the party boxes up and take them to the different parties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they moved. They're in a new facility in the township.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Angela.
I was gonna speak on that. I mean, it's on our agenda a little bit later,
Yeah.
but I can say something now, I guess. I do agree a rec center in our township would be nice. I think that the township has to stay out of that business. I don't think, we get told all the time about all these different communities that have rec centers. I think very few of them own a rec center. They're privately built, privately run, privately everything. And I know, just, no offense to anybody in here, but we hear every month in here, lately we've heard people come in and say we have nothing for kids. And I get offended by that because I think our township offers a ton of stuff for kids. I grew up in the middle of Markview Manor. I played baseball, wiffle ball, kickball in the middle of the street, as all the kids did. We got on our bikes and rode our bikes. I mean, there was things for kids to do when I grew up. I was busy every day in the summer. Now I just think, I don't think there's nothing for kids to do. I think it's the kids don't want to leave their house. I live in Willow Glen now, and when I moved in, there was nothing but kids all up and down my street. But you know what? Every summer day when I was outside, there was no kids outside because none of the kids want to get away from their computer. That being said, that's a whole nother issue, but I think our township offers a lot for children.
Sir,
We-
can I chime in here?
Can I just finish?
Okay, go ahead.
We offer a lot in the township. We have good parks. We have a lot of good businesses here for kids. I just don't see the township getting into the business of a rec center. I think there's better options to that. I was coming to all these comprehensive planning meetings here, and the lady that runs those, and I never knew this, and when you plan a cost to build something or to operate a business, she said 25% is to build that business. It's going to cost 75% more to maintain and run that business for the course of its life. So we don't just, if we look at building a rec center or opening a rec center, that's a minuscule amount of money compared to what it's going to cost to maintain and to run that, the rest of that center's life. So I think what we need to do is we need to find a private enterprise that's going to come in here and do something like that. I think that's the only way. You look at Hempfield Township, yeah, they have somewhat of a athletic center up there with pickleball courts inside and some other things. Hempfield Township has a huge tax base. They have a casino, they have malls, they have strip malls. They don't have a police force. 1/3 of our budget in this township goes to our police department, about $5 million out of a $15 million budget. We're at our limits money-wise. I mean, that would definitely have to be a tax increase for people to have a rec center here. And again, I know it's coming up in the, under our work session discussions. What I want to propose coming up is for us to look at what property the township owns. Can we donate a piece of property to a private enterprise that wants to come in here and market it that way? This property is available for a private enterprise to come in and to build a rec center and to run a rec center. That's what I'd like to task us with doing. And I know we've discussed the property down by the Public Works. I don't know what other I know we own other properties in the township. Just trying to think outside the box where we don't have to get involved in the business of building and running a rec center. Why don't we offer free land, free property, and say UPMC, Excella, any organization like that, come in here, you can have this property, this is what you have to do. And we set the parameters on what they build and what they have there and what they offer our citizens. That's what I have down here. So I wanted to bring that up today, which you beat me to the punch here and with your comments, so I figured I'd approach that this way. But I wanted to bring that up to the board to open it up for comments and just to see where we can go with that. If that's feasible to do, I think that's probably our best bet. I just don't see us being able at any point to open our own facility. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me continue.
The free land, anybody that comes in here and we give them free land, 9 times out of 10, and I found this out in the military when I worked contracting, they're gonna want some type of tax exempt.
Excuse me,
for
An-
the first 4 or 5 years.
Excuse me,
You don't wanna
Angelo.
do that.
This isn't a debate given back, so if you have any more thing to offer to the board, this is a board's time to respond back to you. You're fine.
Can I just say one more?
Yeah,
thing?
go ahead.
At the beginning of my little spiel, I said $40 a year for each person might cover it. That was just a roundabout figure, $40 a year. If we took $40 in taxes for everybody a year in North Huntington, Irwin, because this is us gonna be using it, we can make up a pretty good chunk of that money. And like I also said, we have empty buildings here in the township that are sitting there.
We don't own them, though.
We don't own them, but the people who do own them don't want to be paying the light, gas, and telephone, light and gas and water bill on those buildings, and they may agree to us coming in there. I know, I took more time.
No, you're fine. You're okay.
So it's, and you said about $15 million? Okay, to run the police department?
5.
$5 million to run the police department? I say give them 2 more, because we need at least 2 more permanent police officers on duty. Or either 4 more part-time police officers on duty.
Thank you,
Because of the
Angelo.
fact the amount of children we have here in North Huntington, we need the extra police protection. But that's, I know you're looking at me like you did your time. Like I said, you want to see the figure, I got it here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners' response for Angelo?
Yes. These questions don't require an answer, please. You can have your seat. But I'm your age, So I grew up here. And when I was a kid in Penns Woods, we had a civic association that handled all the entertainment, the summer rec programs, the movies in their little parkette down there, baseball games, carnival, things of that nature. I think Ron said you grew up in Mortview. They had Mortview Manor Women's Association. They sponsored programs. There's a lot of volunteerism that's gone away. We have a lot of fire departments that are struggling. People don't want to donate their time. It's great that you do. The other thing I wanted to say is you mentioned that the church, if it was vacant, would be a great place to serve locally. People could walk there. You said that little area. How many of those centers do you think we would need to cover the whole township? So, yeah, right. It would be a lot. We have 7 fire departments, and, if every one of those was a rec center, how would we staff them? How would people get there? And like Ron said too, the people that own the buildings, the vacant buildings, they want to sell them or generate business with them. I don't know that we could satisfy that need. So, thank you.
Any other commissioners' response?
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah.
Just, I too grew up in Penns Woods. As a matter of fact, Rich Gray and his family were our neighbors. I think we're separated by about 8 houses. Penns Woods has a civic association, just like Rich was saying, in a ball field. Used to be an infantry officer in the United States Army, and now I'm a logistics officer. Ideas are great to have. I love ideas. It creates and generates talk and conversation and debate. Big fan of it. Logistically, like Mr. Gray was saying and Mr. Zone was saying, how many civic centers would there have to be? We could say let's build one and let's centralize it. Well, how big is the township, Harry? What's the mileage, width-wise?
27 square miles.
27 square miles. We're gonna have to have more than one. We're gonna have to have more than 3, because people are gonna wanna walk to it. So now we're up to 5, at the cost of $5 million apiece. Harry, what would generate, Angelo said $40 per person. What is the mill per person in this county, in this township? One mill brings how much money?
About $400,000 to the general fund.
What, divided by the people? So, what's $40 to a person?
I'd have to have a calculator.
Okay. Rich, you gonna find out?
Well, I don't even think you can just multiply by the amount of citizens, because little kids don't pay taxes.
And I agree with that, right. Logistically, again, I love the idea. It fosters debate and conversation. It would really be nice to have something. I'm not saying that
If you-
1.2 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1.2. If you
$40 per
tax
person.
the kids too.
Yeah.
Tax the kids too.
That's 31,500 people.
Okay. So we're having to raise taxes then. That's a tough pill in this day and age. With the cost of everything, and fuel looks like it's gonna go over to $4 a gallon by July. People are cutting back. We have the ballparks here. PAL has ballparks, NCAA has ballparks. We have Parks and Recreation that you'd get in touch with. It's too bad you guys didn't come next week, Wednesday, where Mr. Dan Miller from Parks and Recreation can talk to you about it. We've got a lot of parks. And I have to say the same thing that Mr. Zone is saying, but we've got a lot of kids that are more than happy to stay at home and play with their Xbox. The activity, you have to admit, when we grew up in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, we were active little buggers. Our parents used to tell us, you get your butt outside and you come home when the sun sets. That's how we all lived, right?
Before the lights come on at night.
Yeah, and it was a different time. It was a better time, I think. But the video games have really stymied kids' athletics. Children, today, there's a 60% increase in juvenile diabetes across America. 60% is what I read just a couple weeks ago. That is a sedentary lifestyle. Predominantly, that's the cause of that raise. The kids have to get out, and I think the parents got to push them. We really do. I think we can have rec centers, but I just don't think the kids are going to show. Thank you.
Only a few things I had to offer. We did a feasibility study many years ago, and if I remember correctly, and don't quote me on this, but it would take something about like $1 million a year out of the township's budget to facilitate a recreation center. On top of that, with that $1 million, for a family to be memberships, it was in the range, I think, of $150 to $250 a month membership to keep that facility going. When we did that study, and like I said, it's probably been 12 years ago. So at that time, the board did not pursue it any further because it wasn't cost effective. I think the idea might have got $2,000 at the time. I think everyone on this board, don't want to speak for everyone, is open to having the ideas of rec center. I think the biggest hurdle to get to is cost, the feasibility of it, and we talk about, their commissioners talk about the local parks, you know, the neighborhood parks. You don't see the neighborhood parks actually crowded. You see Indian Lake or Oak Hollow crowded, and more like destination parks now, because oftentimes parents don't allow their kids just to go down the street and play ball. So that's why the township's actually starting to invest more in the premier parks. I would lack a better term to say in the Indian Lakes, the Oak Hollows, because it's more of a destinations where people would take their kids and families to those parks versus everyone walking to the neighborhood park. Not saying that we don't invest in the neighborhood parks, but more are the investments put to those parks. And I know we'll get to the other residents spoke to the stop sign, but Mr. Bates talked about a little bit about this recreation center and having monies go to different parks. That's actually currently being done. That gets allocated when there's a new home and it gets built, put to the park that was in that area. So if it's Lions Park or Oak Hollow, those monies are allocated to those parks to be invested in that area. So that's currently actually being done. All right, and then we'll discuss the stop sign by outside Lions Park and speeding. I do believe last week, or last month, excuse me, we spoke about the stop signs that were there. And from my recollection, they were actually put there. Mr. Gray might be able to better correct me, but they were put there just for exactly what we're here talking about tonight. And the state did get involved because legally, municipalities cannot use stop signs to control traffic.
Control speed.
Yeah, control speeding. So we were required to take them down at that time. I do believe township engineer and, you know, our police department are looking into a different way to hinder speeding on the road, to follow up with that.
Last month, you know, I talked over in Europe. They have visual deception things, and I talked about that. Mike Turley sat right here and agreed he had been in Europe and he had seen it. They do it in Japan. They do it in Great Britain. And what you do is you use road paint to create a visual deception, and strangely enough, it works. It helps people slow down. But the state came by, and I think they tar and chipped over top of that paint. So we lost that. And what we want to try to do is bring that back. Lynn, I'm a big advocate of speed humps and got shot down for years. I live on Ormsby Drive in Penns Woods, and honest to God, it's a speedway for every knucklehead that wants to test out their car coming up that road. Just yesterday, I screamed at some young kid, told him to slow down. And it's a 25-mile-an-hour zone. I guarantee you he was doing 50. It's not uncommon on Ormsby. I've had the police come down there and paint some lines. But they've got to staff it, and they've got to get officers to sit there. Listen, we've got a real speeding problem in this township. And where it is on the street, it's just not our township. This is nationwide. I don't know what's going on with people that they're in a rush to get to where they're going. But like Angelo said and John, and perhaps even Nick said it, what's it gonna take? A death of a child? It's unfortunate that so much of our life and so much of the government, whether it's federal, state, or local, and I'm not blaming the folks up here, are reactionary. Let's wait until something happens. That's how MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, got started. That's how DAD got started, okay? Why do we always have to wait for something bad to happen? But Chief Rizzo brought it up last month. The state ties our hands on these roads. Yes or no?
Were you talking about my radar comments?
I'm talking about everything.
Well,
Whether
yeah,
it's
I
a
mean, we-
stop sign, a speed hump, or radar.
You're talking about stop signs. Speed humps have a whole, I know the township engineer is familiar, there's a whole PennDOT plan on how to put them out. The other issue with speed humps is the road department and plowing roads in the winter. What do you do? I mean, you have 400 and some miles of roadway, there's county, state, and municipal trucks out in the wintertime plowing. If you have speed humps on every single street, what are the drivers supposed to do? Stop every time they get to a hump? I don't know of an answer for that. That would be one for Director Alberts and how municipalities in the north handle speed humps on roadways, because I would think it would hinder snow removal and plowing particularly. I think it would be, I don't know how they go about going over them with a plow.
Unless they were, you could remove them.
Yeah,
In other words, they're
again,
temporary.
that's possible, but once you start down that road, understand
Right.
what's the criteria and where do you say no? We
I
have
agree.
450 miles of roadway. We just talked about that 27 square miles to staff just rec centers. Now you're talking about miles and miles and miles and miles of roadway and who gets them and who doesn't.
And that all comes under the ramification of logistics. Logistics can be a
Right.
mega nightmare.
And
It really
you
can,
and you
on
also-
every issue.
You also talked about the warrants for stop signs, and we were just discussing this. Yes, there's warrants and reasons why, and Zach brought it up, why. The liability goes both ways. If you put the stop signs up just because you want to, and you violate the warrant, and a crash occurs because the stop sign's not supposed to be there, the township approved those stop signs to go in. Liability works in both directions. If we can find a way to make the stop signs work within the rules, I'm all for it. Mr. Bates brought up a great point, which really interests me. The stop signs were there a long, long time ago. Why were they removed? I mean, that's a question that I'm interested in, is they were there, were they removed for cause, or were they just removed? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We took a lot out when John Shepherd was here. We got grief from the state. I know Farview is another location. McKee, I don't remember all of them. But in the old days, very old, when you and I were young, they used to use them for speed control. It was a political thing. Just put it in.
Just put it in.
Put it in.
Make it happen.
Everybody was doing it.
Right.
And then the state got involved everywhere and started forcing you to take them out. And for liability.
It works both ways.
Yeah.
I understand.
Can I,
Yeah, go ahead, Lindsay.
I understand that we don't want to use stop signs for the answer for speeding, right? But it is a park entrance, and there's a lot of traffic on that road. I just don't know why we're running around in circles over this. Like, somebody is going to get hit, and we're going to be really lucky if they don't die. And I just hate that we're just going around in circles, and we talk about this, at least since I've been here for over a year now, and nothing's happening. And there's always answers, whether it's from our assistant manager or our engineer. Like, why can't we just get 2 stop signs? And like, it is for safety. It's not necessarily just for, let's not talk about speeding. Let's just talk about, it's at a park entrance at where 2 roads are intersecting. Like, I just don't understand what the big deal is. Why can't we get this done?
I think manager.
It's
Because
Two stop signs.
Chief knows there is a specific criteria for stop signs. The intersection has to meet it, or you can't do it.
But what gives the state authority to subjugate
They're
the
the
township?
state.
We're the ones paving the roads, man. We're the ones paying for it.
Excuse me, it's not a debate. Manager Falk had something to offer.
This is the game plan. I'm going to direct our chief of police to have a police officer sit down there at whenever there's a bus stop, whenever he's going to get the bus schedule, we're going to have a police officer sit down there when the kids are getting on and off the bus. I'm going to evaluate our crossing guard situation, see if we have room to add another crossing guard, to put a crossing guard down there during those times. We have LED speed signs that can tell you how fast you're going. We are going to put those down there because those do slow people down about 25 to 30%. They do. I've done traffic studies, and they do. So we're going to stick those down there and keep them down there. If we have to purchase more throughout the other township, we're going to purchase more. I'm going to take this off of our assistant manager. I am going to take the lead on this and see what we can do legally to get stuff down there. I do know that we did put a stanchion down there. It did get stolen. We put another one back up. Do not steal that. We will come after you. And I sat down there when we put the other one up because it says stop for pedestrians, and people were actually stopping. And I got concerned, well, there might be a rear-end collision, but at the end of the day, I'd rather have a rear-end collision than somebody getting hurt. But they do work a little bit. But we're going to tackle this head-on. We could put all the signs we can till we're blue in the face, but we have to, sometimes it's hard to enforce those signs. But we are going to do everything that we possibly can, and we're going to have you're going to come to next month's meeting with a different attitude. You're going to come here thanking us because we'll have better answers next month.
I just also want to add, if you see a school bus speeding and you get the kind of response that you got, that should be a phone call to the bus company and the school district. Because that's kind of out of our purview with that.
Thank you. Is there any other responses, citizen input? All right, work session discussion topics. Manager Falk?
Sure. Item number 1, action to approve resolution number 108 of 2023, authorizing the Township of North Huntington to enter into settlement agreements with Teva, Allergen, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart regarding opioid abuse and addiction.
Is that being voted on tonight, or is that for next week?
We need that voted on tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Discussion.
Why do we need it tonight?
So this is the second round of opioid funding. It is due back and signed by the township by the 17th before next week's meeting. We just happened to stumble upon it the end of last week, and we've worked with the solicitor's office to draft the resolution and get everything that we need to be signed to turn in. It's due on Monday.
Okay.
This will get a second round of opioid funding.
And we already approved last year's already.
And that's very important because the settlements that are coming out of these opioid lawsuits are pretty substantial.
Any other board discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Oak Hollow Park improvements. A few weeks ago, Commissioner Atwood and I met with the Norwin Youth Football, and we looked at the field up next to the parking lot, the top part of the field. There's the parking lot and the restrooms and a big open space. The youth football organization is really looking for a place to play. We can't provide them a true home. However, that is a pretty big area up there. Now we feel that we could possibly put a multi-purpose turf field, a walking track, a concession stand with some bathrooms and some storage areas for multiple youth organizations. The turf alone is probably going to be about $800,000 to $900,000, but there is grant money for it. The grant money to go after is through DCNR. They are more strict. They work on a point basis. To really get this started, We'd have to have our consulting engineer who has a architect or a landscape architect on staff that's designed fields for some of the big RMU, slippery rock, things of that. So next week, I'd like to have a motion on your agenda for approval to bring on our consulting engineer to do a master site plan up there. So that way we can have a cost estimate of the field, we can see the design. We would meet with the various youth organizations to see what their needs are. So that way we incorporate everybody. We just can't have one organization have a field. But meet with the area organizations of soccer, football, lacrosse, and design a field up there. So that way, once we have that master site plan, we have the cost estimates, then we can start putting packages together apply for grants to the DCNR and through the DCED.
How do we prevent organizations from fighting with each other? Who has to be on the field?
They would have to call the office and schedule
Okay, so
time.
through Parks and Recreation.
Correct.
Okay.
Or the front office to schedule a time for the field.
Very good, thank you.
The, believe the
Angela, we're not allowed
football organization, does want to contribute money. They said they're gonna be able to seek grants. They're looking anywhere between 800 to $1 million, that they could possibly get for this as well. They just need a place to do it, so, that's what started the whole conversation.
Yeah, so the DCNR grant that we would go after, one of them, I think both of them are about a 50% match, but one's about a $500,000 and the other one's about a $250,000. They'd have to be applied for next year. So if things go smoothly and according as planned, we can have the plan and everything prepared to submit these grants at the beginning of January of next year. So technically, you wouldn't even break ground until maybe fall of next year when the grants are awarded, I believe. So, but to get the process started, we have to start first with having the consulting engineer have their landscape architect and design a master site plan for up there, and we get cost estimates for everything.
So are we going to get cost estimates for the engineer for next week's meeting?
What do you mean?
How much would that design cost us?
I don't know. I can reach out to them and get a quote, but it's our consulting engineer, so we would go with them.
Okay.
Usually they're probably about 10%.
And you're talking about the top of the hill?
The top of the hill, the large flat area. If you've ever been up there, it's a large flat area. It's huge. It's perfectly flat. All right, moving on. I have a junior commissioner program that Commissioner Atwood asked to have on, or put together. So I put together a program for the Board of Commissioners for the following school year, but next week, at next week's meeting, we can advertise for a junior commissioner and have a deadline, and then they could have time to prepare their essays and turn them in, and we can interview them and have a student in here around August. Any questions about that program? Okay, moving on to Brandon
Real quick,
Earp.
Harry, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Tyler Baum is doing something similar in Irwin. I'm having breakfast with him to talk about how they do it, and then I'm gonna report back to Harry and kind of give him the feedback from that meeting. But, you know, I looked through what you had prepared, and I think that's exactly what I was looking for. I don't think if anyone has any other objections on that, I think it's a good thing to move forward with.
Yeah, and I think the student will give us some insight as far as some recreation programs that we could add to our repertoire.
I might add, that might be something that you'd be interested in.
I just wanted to say something else. The field that you're talking about, they do soccer up there every summer.
Excuse me, sir.
They have soccer camp on that field. The one that you're talking
There's
about.
two fields.
If
Yep.
you want to go that route.
Go ahead,
make
Andrew
that
Falk.
into a soccer field, why can't you ask for additional monies to put a rec center on there also. If we're going that far to get that much money.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
sir,
Okay, all
So-
right, I'm out of order.
Item number 4, Brandon Urban Bond Release. This is a demolition, I believe, through the Tom McGuire that has met his requirements to have $10,000 released back to him. So you'll have a motion on that for the agenda next week. Item number 5, an internal control policy. We do not have a formal internal control policy in place, so I crafted one and have in front of you for review. This would be good for the auditors, good for budget time. It's good to help some internal controls and policies set forth as far as finances. So you have a motion on next week to approve that policy. Are there any questions? Moving on to item number 6, a fire call response policy. We do not have a policy in place for this. However, with volunteer firefighters being in a high demand and there's not very many out there, we do have 2 active on staff during the day, one in Public Works and one that's our engineering technician. So this policy I crafted from another municipality will allow these individuals go to the firehouse, their respective fire department, to respond to the call. It's be major incidents, a working structure fire, multiple fire companies coming into the municipality, a mass casualty incident. It'll be under the department director, whoever that is, they report to, can decide how they want to go or if they want to go, and things of that nature. Is there any questions about having that policy in place?
I think that's a good idea, because private companies have that same policy, and we would be getting more in tune with private companies. I would want to make sure that it's for something major and not for, like, smell of gas in a building, or, like, say, we have so many multiple calls at Walden View, so that it would have to be something major that they're going out for.
Right, the policy in place has a structure fire, a vehicle crash with serious injuries or entrapment, a multi-vehicle crash with 4 or more vehicles, multiple fire departments responding into the township. A request has been made by the fire chief or assistant chief or a firefighter who's in charge of that scene for additional employees to respond, which they can just call the dispatch center and advise them that, hey, we need more manpower.
I was under the impression we already had a policy, or was it not codified at some point? Because I know this has been going on for a long time. They've been letting people go. How did it work?
I don't know. I couldn't find anything, but I could double check, but this could be an updated policy,
All right.
so.
Hey, I have a question there, Manager Falk, on that. On the bottom of page 1 on that policy, it talks of like, they get paid for that time, but it doesn't count as hours worked for overtime calculations. But unless it says that it's covered by a CBA. Is there any of our unions that is addressed in their CBA? Do we know?
I don't believe so. So if
It
this
wouldn't
was-
affect anyone, probably, that wording there, right? I mean,
I
that,
don't think it would.
the hours they're gone, all of our employees would get paid, but probably none of them it would count toward their overtime hours.
Right.
Right, okay.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
All right, moving on to item number 7, a resolution for plan revision for Tuscan Hills Development, Phase Number 7. Any questions or concerns about that resolution? All right, item number 8, recreation, Commissioner Zona.
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse because we just went over this, but that's what I was gonna address under the recreation here. I think we've talked about this, and it is a big complaint from people in the community about a rec center, so, I mean, I would just like the township to pursue seeing what property we have available, and we can just, once we get what properties are available, we can discuss what the board feels on whether we donate property and we actually advertise it, or we go out and be proactive in searching for someone and send letters to some big companies, such like I said, UPMC, Excella. We send them a letter and saying, that we're offering this property for somebody that wants to come in and develop it, and then we would set the parameters. Again, we can discuss it at a later date. I don't want to keep harping on it now, but we would set the parameters of what we want, and, I mean, I just think realistically, that's the only way we're going to get something done in this township.
Yeah, Director Fonzie and I last year did put a list together of township-owned properties that are vacant, that we don't have any parks or infrastructure on. There is a handful. I don't know the legal requirements of giving them away. I think you might have to put them up for auction.
You're right. But you can also do naming rights. I mean, there's ways to generate income. But you do have to advertise them for sale, and it goes to the highest bidder.
Either that, or we'll be able to do like a long-term lease for a low
Or you do
amount of
some
time.
sort of
Yeah.
deal where they come up and put up a facility, et cetera. You know, it's pretty abstract right now.
Yeah.
Well, let me just touch on what Angelo was saying, and I kind of agree with it. Angelo earlier made the comment about, look, we've already got the land in the form of one of our township parks. Why can't we put up a building on the land that we already have and then call that the rec center, rather than going out and reinventing? This is where logistically this gets to become a real nightmare. Which one do we do? Do we stick with the land that we have in the form of parks and put a building on it and call it a rec center? Or do we go out and purchase a building off the park property and call that the rec center? 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. And we're gonna get all kinds of people talking to us about it and what works best. Ultimately, a decision will have to be made on those. But what's to say that we couldn't, like Angelo was saying, put a building on the park, and it has those hours, it has to have hours, we gotta close it. We do. We can't staff that baby 24/7, there's no way.
If I may elaborate on the price, if you remember, at budget season, we were $800,000 over our revenues. So we're spending more than we're bringing in, and we have to use the general fund reserve to balance the budget, and that's going to be for quite some time.
Or raise taxes.
Or raise taxes.
Which is a bad
Not
issue.
only do we have the recreation issues, we also have paving. We only get so much from liquid fuels to pave. We have to supplement this year, I think it was about $200,000 from that general fund reserve to add to pave some more roads. We also have the unfunded MS4 mandate, which we're spending about $400,000 this year for a pond, for a retrofit basin over in Lincoln Hills area. On top of it, we do have some failing infrastructure, Indian Lake, the
Damn.
the dam. That's going to be partially funded with grant money, but we still have to come up with the other half. And the barn there is unsafe. I mean, it's safe for pedestrians, but we have to do something here the next year or two to make that even safer. So we have that as well. And then we also have the contractual obligations to our employees to meet those needs. I would recommend, with my professional experiences, to start small with little activities at each park throughout the summer, as we did back in the day.
Okay.
I think that went on up in maybe 2009, 2010. I'm not 100% sure, but I did find information that we had field trips to the zoo and things like that. And of course, I think we need to hire somebody to do that, but it can be a part-time person. We could just start small. Let's grab the low-hanging fruit first, and we can budget for that next year, and see where we're at with that. Maybe the junior commissioner program can get some volunteers from the high school to help with those recreational activities during the summer. So it might not cost anything except for the programs. But that'd be my recommendation, is start small with how we used to do it back in the day at the parks, at the community parks.
Why can't we get a few pole building kits and have our staff assemble them and pour a concrete pad and have an empty pole building that people, clubs and organizations can rent out. That would not cost an arm and a leg, and possibly we could get some grant money for that as well.
Then you have the electricity, you have heating, you have insurance, you have everything. That's just maintenance, maintenance, maintenance.
Well, if you slap a couple solar panels on the roof, that's your electricity. You don't have to run an electric line for that. And you could have your inside heat from that. But like Harry said, start small, maybe do it as a demonstration at one of the parks and rent it out like you rent out the pavilions. And
My opinion on any talk or any looking at the township building or operating or running a rec center long-term is number one, foolish for us to get involved in. You just heard the manager talk about our budget, which we all know because we voted on it here. I just think any talk is foolish and it's never gonna happen. It's beyond possibility for us to do that, I think.
And I'm not talking about a rec center. I'm just talking about, like we've erected pavilions, erect a pole building that, like they have at Twin Lakes, where somebody can come in and lease that building. And they have other ways of tying, like restrooms and things with the peat moss system, the EcoFlow that they have at Twin Lakes. So, it's just a thought.
Again, I would what I wanted on here was I would just ask that we pursue, just look at what properties we have available and what we can do with it, whether we have to auction it or lease it or whatever like that, something that.
Excuse me, sir.
So I'm gonna-
Can I be recognized for 1 minute? I know I'm out of order, but I'd like to be recognized for 1 minute. Please.
Yeah, I mean, if the board's comfortable with that, typically, we had time for residents' input, but if the board's comfortable, can Angelo come up and speak one more time quickly? Just, if you can't, keep it short, sir.
I'll keep it real short. Reference that he was saying about flattening out the land. The Pennsylvania Corps of Engineers every year does a free project. 5 years ago, they went down to Honduras and built a road. Why can't we petition to the Pennsylvania Corps of Engineers, if we're gonna go with the small first, to put a track over there on that flat area and a field over there on that area? They do a free drill every year. If they can go down to Honduras in the state of Pennsylvania, pay for the money to build a road, we can petition for them to put us a track and level us a field over there.
Thank you, sir. That's a good idea.
It's free money. We don't have to pay for it. It's done as a grant and they get their practice in. And one last thing, she was talking about a tent. Indian Town Gap, somebody was talking about a tent structure. Indian Town Gap has canvas tents down there in their salvage yard. We could try to get one at GP Larges stretch from that building over there to the other end of the police station, and it fits 200 people in here.
Thank you, sir.
I know.
All right. Manager Falk, unless anyone has anything else on recreation.
I want to, just
Yeah,
one
sorry,
thing real quick.
Jason.
We're gonna go back to when I was in high school, wasn't quite as long ago, but I still have foggy memories, don't worry. The Norwin, I believe it was through Norwin, had a position at all of the parks for a student to kind of play games with people and, and just run the park for the day in the summer. I remember bouncing around from a couple different ones, and I'm sure that's something that we could probably approach the school district again, go back to our agreement about recreation. I think that maybe we could do something part-time with some staff this summer. Maybe get some kids to come down, and that's just what they do, is just run stuff at the parks. I know it was very popular back in the 90s, and I think it would be popular again today.
Like a day camp.
that's the issue we discussed a couple years ago. That's that contract we have with the school district where we provide the school crossing guards, and they provided that, and they quit doing it. We went a few years ago and asked them to provide some more projects, and all they did was give us a list of, said, here, we do, here's a list, and they gave us a list, that's it. They never offered to step up to do anything else. I mean, we can try that, but that was what the agreement was. We paid for the school crossing guards in exchange for that.
You know, a lot of colleges, Jason, running off of what you're saying, are looking for kids that are going to be doing community service. Community service seems to be a big thing in a kid's dossier resume to a college. I could see where we could entice, that's a bad, I don't want to say that if it's a bad word, but I mean, school students to come out and offer their services for community. Township would probably offer them a letter so they can put into their jacket and they can show their college of their choice and say, hey, look, I helped out North Huntington Township for 2 summers in a row and I did 40 years of community service. We've always, Angelo knows this, we've always been taught about having the tools in your bag. And you gotta pull your tools out of your bag and find out what tools you've got. We've got a lot of resources. We got a lot of smarts up here, and folks in the community too will help us along with it with their great ideas. I think we just have to become creative and pull out our tools out of our bag and see what we've got and go from there. I'm sure we can do something. I know that we can. We've got that can-do attitude, right? Cool.
Thank you, Andrew Falk.
If
Yeah.
I could just remind the board of 3 statements, facts. Number one, I'm as old as Angelo. And I've been up here for 21 years and 3 months. The issues are all the same. Only the people change, and the people bringing them up and the people offering solutions. But there's 3 things that you have to remember. There's two main reasons people move to North Huntington. One of them is good schools, and one of them is low taxes. And they don't want those raised. And when people ask for all these amenities, you're going to have to raise them and eliminate one of the reasons people move here. And the other thing is, with all the talk I've heard over the years about grants, there's grants for this, grants for that. There is no such thing as free money. Grants are just tax dollars taken from us and given back to us for doing the right thing. So that's it. Those are facts.
All right, thanks.
All right, item number 9, vacant, abandoned property and land issues. Commissioner Zona.
Yeah, I'll be brief with this one too. I just, behind a rec center, the next complaint I get the most is people that have unkept yards, unkept properties. And I know we have one person, we have Josh here doing all that, and he's overwhelmed, I'm sure, with that. And again, I just think he's doing his job and going out and doing what he needs to do. There's no teeth. We can't hold people accountable. I'm going to bring up a couple properties here. There's one across the street from Commissioner Wengren's house where there's trash, rubbish in bags piled up around his house. And there was probably 50 bags of trash there at one point in time, if not more. And it's been like that for a year. And it's garbage that's leaning against this house. Number one, that's not only a safety hazard to the people in the house, it's a hazard, a health hazard to the people around it. She lives straight across the street because I've been to her house and I've seen it from her house. So there's another gentleman that's been calling me, and I talked to Josh about it. I may have talked to Director Fonzie. A tree blew over in a gentleman's front yard probably over a year ago, a big substantial tree, and they have not cut it, and it's laying in the front yard, and all the neighbors see it, and all the neighbors are sick of it, and there's nothing we can do to remove that tree. I think Josh said he was very well aware of it. He was gone. The guy's been cited, but nothing happens. It just keeps going on and going on. I know from emailing with you, you said the township adopted this International Property Maintenance Code, correct? They adopted it, so I see that there's really there's enforcement in there, but there's no penalties. So we follow what, our ordinance for the actual penalties? Because I didn't see the actual penalties in there. It spells out the enforcement, like the grades of the crimes and stuff.
Yeah, and we can cite people, and a lot of times you'll get people that happily pay the fine. We don't want them to pay the fine. We
Right.
want them to clean up the problem.
Right.
So, and then it gets stuck in the magistrate's office, so our hands are tied there, too.
Yeah, and then from talking and asking people, the magistrates say, well, if they can't pay if some people don't even pay them, and they say, if they can't pay it, how are we gonna get money? If they don't have money, how are we gonna get money off of them? It just seems like there's no teeth, and I don't know what we can do. I've been researching, I probably looked up 4 or 5 different communities around us, and I'm still in the process of comparing. I guess my point in this whole matter is, I would like to see something a little more substantial that we can do to clean up some of these properties. Coming to the Comprehensive Planning Commission meeting that day, I was at the meeting, you were at a couple ladies here, they just complained about their neighborhood, and I'm not sure where they lived because I didn't ask them, but just different property owners had stuff growing out of their gutters, and this one had a tree that was laying in the yard that wasn't cleaned up. And granted, I'm the last one that wants to tell people what to do on their property and how to keep their property up to specifications. But when it's affecting neighbors, and if you live next door to that, you're not going to want to wake up every day and look at that. So that's what I have. That's why I had that in there. Go ahead.
Let me just say this. This all goes back to the district judge. And if the district judge isn't willing to enforce your regulations and fine people, nothing's going to happen. And unfortunately, the people that are coming before the district judge are resident voters who vote for him or her. So it's really a screwy situation when you think about it. These judges, and I see this in community after community, you have to almost go over and have a heart-to-heart with the district judge and say, look, we need some help here. And that means one of you or 2 of you should go see the district judge and say, these are the problems we're having. Can't you help us with this? And you got to get over the fact that the people that he's going to maybe be citing are potential voters to him. But I mean, that's really where I've found to be the most effective way. I've done it in Gateway, I've done it in Plum, and it just takes a little bit of education to the district judge to know what the issues are. You take your zoning officer, you take maybe your chief of police, and you go have a heart-to-heart.
And I do agree with you there, and I have a question on, if somebody's grass is too high, we send the road department or our public works in to
We
cut
lean
their
it.
grass.
Yeah.
Can we send somebody in to cut their tree out of their front yard, or can we send somebody over to this house to remove that trash from their yard? That's the issue. The grass thing isn't an issue. We get that taken care of. Some of these other ones,
They won't do the yard cutting on property that has an owner present because they said it's a safety concern. That guy or woman or homeowner couldn't come out and do whatever if they see somebody on their property cutting their grass. So they will only do that if it's an abandoned property. So I want to clear that up. And I've been in communication with Josh for a while now over these certain houses that are in my ward. 2 of them are on my street, and it's ridiculous. But finally, once again, he had to threaten that if this porch wasn't cleaned by a Monday, they were going to be fined $500 a day. And guess what? All of that crap was cleaned up by Monday. So it took that many times in visits, and it's ridiculous. I've had another house that has had 2 broken down cars sitting in the driveway, which is also in our ordinance that's not allowed. And it's been something that I've been harping on for a year. Finally, now it's in the magistrates. So, I mean, everything is dragged out, and I feel bad for Josh. I don't know how much help he has, but, I mean, people need to start taking a little bit more pride in their property and personal accountability and cleaning their yard and their porches up. And it's not fair to their surrounding neighbors.
and some of them don't take that pride and responsibility. And that's just what you said was my point, actually, too, Bruce, is why does it take Yeah, now we're gonna fine them $500 a day. Can't we do that right from the beginning and say, especially something with trash in the yard? I mean, that's a
First time
health
around, it's
hazard.
You have 30 days.
And I think that's unacceptable. I mean, is that our ordinance or is that, where is that coming from?
That's our ordinance, correct, Mr. Fonzie?
Yeah. That's my point. That's what I'd like to see change, where we have a little more enforcement up front on these to say
We
that.
can reduce it from 30 days to 10 days.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Something that has more force to it, that we can actually get something done.
Management comes every week.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't pull your bags to the curb in your can.
And thank God the guy did it now, but if it took you, that was a year probably, right?
A year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, somebody shouldn't have to live with that beside their house for that long of a time. I'd just like to look at that ordinance and see if we can tighten things up in there a little bit.
Right, and that's, you know, for a township our size, we probably should really have an additional code enforcement officer. But that's one of those balancing acts, you know? How much personnel can we afford versus recreation versus paving versus the MS4? It's a tough balancing act to do, and we just can't afford it without raising taxes. We want to clean up your yards, but we have to raise taxes, and then no one will want to come here, as Commissioner Gray mentioned.
I think historically too, not to be a dead horse, but or dead property, but all our code enforcement's basically complaint driven. It's not that we're looking out there at properties, so, and I guess you could all say, well, who's making a complaint? One neighbor might be really particular and say your paint looks faded, you should paint your house, versus there's a fallen down tree in the front yard that looks horrible. So, I mean, that could be it too, but I mean, it's all strictly complaint driven. It's not that we're out there actively looking to, with the tape measures, your grass is a little bit too long to cite you.
Yeah, Josh is one person. We have one officer for 15,000 properties. So he's stretched.
All right, item number.
As far as Bruce said, the magistrate, our current magistrate is not running again. So maybe we could communicate with the next one,
Yeah.
or Joe can get it in the paper that it's an issue that the candidates should pay attention to.
And the guy going out of office doesn't have that worry anymore.
Right.
He ought to be willing
I
to say, hey.
I think have we been treated relatively well?
It's been
But-
better, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, item number 10, permitting dogs at Indian Lake ordinance. We did have work with the solicitor to draft or amend the previous ordinance. So you'll have it up for consideration next week to allow domesticated dogs at Indian Lake year-round for your, it'll be an advertisement or a motion to advertise next week, and then approved if you want to approve it or deny it at May's
No.
meeting.
This is, I believe, against what our rec director suggests, right?
Correct.
He's in favor of banning them. Okay, I'm not sure I can support this, but I guarantee I can not support it as it's written. Section 2, the language is confusing. It's ambiguous, and I would like that cleaned up before we even consider it. 2A?
Yeah, I have that highlighted too. I don't quite understand that either, the way that's written. And let me see here, domestic
So
animals are.
maybe you take
permitted.
it off for next week and let's revisit the language.
I think it should say, domestic animals are permitted on any North Huntington Township Park property, with the exception of Indian Lake, where no domestic animals shall be permitted other than domestic dogs. The way it's written, it is, I don't understand the way that's written either, yeah. You're right, Rich. Section 2A is what I had highlighted too. That needs cleaned up somehow.
We can clean that up for next week and then still have it on for a motion to advertise it, and you guys can consider that. But the whole synopsis is to allow domesticated animals year-round at Indian Lake Park.
Just domesticated dogs.
Dogs,
Domesticated dogs.
right.
Yeah, and if that's approved, I would like to see ample signage put up that the dog owners are responsible for the conduct of their dogs.
I think something like that is already at Indian Lake. There's something about cleaning up after their
Yeah,
dogs
I
and
talked
stuff.
to Director Miller, and they do put up the signs and the doggy bags
Yeah.
throughout the winter, then they pull them out in the spring.
I'm talking about bad dog behavior,
Right.
you know. Put something up that people are responsible 100% for any bad behavior of a
Yes.
dog.
Whereas the township is not responsible.
Correct.
Because a good lawyer, no offense, Bruce, which is what you are, a good lawyer,
Thanks.
you're welcome, would, I believe, shotgun everybody that has their hands on that property. And then we'd all be going to court and trying to figure out who has the responsibility. So I think putting a sign up there, making it very clear, dog owner, your dog gets wild and attacks somebody or bites somebody, you're fully to blame, and the township will have no responsibility in that at all.
We've allowed dogs there in the wintertime. Do we have any issues? Have we had any issues that you know of, Manager
Not
Falk?
that I'm
That's-
aware of.
I don't think it's even a real issue. I mean, signs would be fine, but I don't think it's an issue like everyone thinks it's gonna be.
I
Do we
would,
already have, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Jason.
Do we already have something in force about nuisance pets and I guess fines that go along with that? Like, you know, dog, you take a dog to the park and becomes a nuisance. Is there something that has teeth already that, or is there just kind of a watch your own dog and be good?
I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look. Director Fonzie, are you familiar with it?
I mean, I don't think there's any way the township staff enforces that, so if a dog's acting unruly, I don't know how we,
Probably just evict them from the park and make them leave.
but who does that? Police?
Probably the police
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
Have to be written,
yeah.
that could be a whole new can of worms.
you know, and who's making the determination, the behavior's bad. Like, that's, I think, that would have to be, I would feel comfortable with those in writing. You know, some stipulation on what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think if we would say that we're gonna fine somebody for bad behavior, then we can't put a sign up there saying that we're 100% not involved, because then we would be involved.
I kind of agree with Commissioner Gray. It was under the recommendation of our Parks Director to not allow dogs. And I was open to the idea of allowing dogs at certain times, but now we're saying that we're going to allow dogs as long as the park's opened up. And I have actually been utilizing Indian Lake Park since the weather's been nice, and the amount of traffic that it has been getting, I actually can't imagine there to be more traffic with dogs there during peak times. I would still be open to possibly letting dogs at certain times throughout the day. But I think, as some of the commissioners alluded to, it's a hard thing to police. I'm not saying that during the winter months that it's not an issue, but there's a lot less traffic in the parks during the winter months. So I think I would still just be in favor of a certain time period allowing dogs, other than just allowing them at all times.
What hours would you recommend for the ordinance?
I mean, I would be open to discussing it, but I was pretty sure if I could read the board last meeting, it would seem like everyone was in favor of letting dogs at the parks at all times. And like I said, not to echo kind of what Commissioner Gray said, but I mean, we've heard about dogs in the park, you know, before some years ago. Things get washed back around, just like the recreation center and other things. I mean, like I said, I'd be open to the idea, just maybe having dogs in the park at non-peak times. I guess I was mistaken when I said, you know, earlier in the morning and later in the afternoon. Mr. Miller said that's actually more of the busier times in the park. So maybe actually, if it's a lunchtime or, you know, noon time, maybe Director Miller could help us out with having the off-peak times. That would be, you know, more suitable to have allowing dogs in the park at that time. But again, that's just my opinion. Any other discussion on dogs in Indian Lake Park ordinance?
All right, item number 11, capital budget amendment. As you are aware, we were awarded a $139,000 grant for the purchase of vehicles. We'd put in for four vehicles, but we're going to try to stretch our dollars and hopefully get 5. But right now, the budget amendment is for 4 vehicles, 1 for the police department, 1 for planning, or 2 for planning and zoning, and 1 for the parks department. Also in there, in the parks department, they did not purchase a quad cab pickup and a top dresser last year, so that money was carried over. They like to put in for that for this year. And also, one item that's not on here that Chief Rizzo brought to my attention under the police department is a software program of 11,000 or 12,000
It's our
recording
It records everything in
that's paid out of here that we did not have in this year's budget. But that'll be added to the police department. The current balance of that is $398,000 with the anticipated tax revenue and of this year, about $529,000. That's with the grants and the tax collection, and the expenditures of $728 will have a balance of $200,000. Then we add that $13,000 budget for that, so we'll be down to $187,000. So that's a healthy fund for our capital projects. Any questions on that budget revision? It'll be by a resolution next week.
Does that include the AED for the VFW?
That'll be paid out of the general fund.
When is that AED going to be given to the VFW?
Once we have the contract signed, we can purchase it
Estimated time?
in about a month.
Okay,
And we'll do a press release, of course, with state reps and the Board of Commissioners.
okay.
So we'll get that ordered and we'll have a meeting with them and give it to them.
All right, so we're looking at, what, 30 to 60 days out?
Correct.
Would that be nice?
Mhm.
Okay.
Because we have to purchase that and then within their contracted time frame, and then we get reimbursed for that. We have to submit an invoice and get reimbursed.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Item number 12, opioid funding, the police department position. I'll turn it over to Chief Rizzo.
All right, I'll try to be as brief as I can because of the long evening. Officer Jandrick next to me, you're all familiar with Anna and her community engagement and within the department. This is Officer Fontaine from White Oak Police Department. He is White Oak DARE officer. And let me explain why we're here. And we talked earlier in the night about the opioid funding. So the opioid funding that you just signed your resolution for was a separate lawsuit from the original funding. Myself and Manager Falk and I believe 11 other communities within Westmoreland County were invited to Westmoreland Community College for a giant meeting with county commissioners and some other social service professionals from Westmoreland County to talk about the opioid funding. It was our understanding from the chiefs of police and law enforcement that when the original settlements were being worked, law enforcement was a component in the settlement process. We then found out very quickly that we were not. When the final agreements came down on the settlements from the lawsuit, law enforcement was basically taken out of the equation. The appendix that we work off of for the settlement itself was Exhibit E, and it's titled List of Opioid Remediation Uses. So we went in, the number of chiefs that were there were a number of Westmoreland County municipalities that have no law enforcement. They're funded by the state, they're supported by the state police. And then there was a number of us that, have departments there. And we had this long, at times, I'd have to be honest, sometimes heated conversations, and the chiefs were not happy, that we felt that we were a three-pronged attack when dealing with this. That we felt that there was a prevention side, an intervention side, and a long-term care side to the complete package of dealing with the opioid problem within our community. So I know the chiefs of police took action, Western PA chiefs sent letters up, Westmoreland chiefs sent letters up. Again, we were fighting from behind. So that's kind of the history of how we ended up here. And so I spent a significant amount of time. I knew the township was in line to receive funding. I did not want this funding to go away. I did not want it to go back to the county. The list of social services that are outlined in this document are things that we, as our municipality, we're just not going to be able to to take on. It's more of things that would happen at a county level, dealing with that. It's the way they built this. However, I did start doing an extensive amount of research, trying to figure out a way that we can benefit our community and our children and our police department and our township in keeping our funding. And so what I came up with is under subsection G, under prevention programs, there's a couple of items in here that do cover us that we could work on. And one of them is funding for media campaigns to prevent opioid use. And they gave an example of that. So that does fall under something that, that we could do. The second one, which is one I kind of hung my hat on, and that's why they're standing next to me, is funding for evidence-based prevention programs in schools. So I brought up DARE. It was shot down immediately because old DARE was not evidence-based. Well, new DARE is evidence-based. They've revamped the DARE program. They re-energized the DARE program nationally. I did a significant amount of research on the DARE program and found out that it is an evidence-based program, which then falls in line with our opioid funding, and it's a use that we could fund using our money that we're receiving from the opioid funding. Going down the line, funding for training for first responders to participate in pre-arrest diversion programs, post-overdose response teams, and similar strategies that connect at-risk individuals to behavioral health services and support. So there was talk at our large meeting at the community college about a opioid response team. That would be a county-based team. Funding could go both ways on how we're going to connect law enforcement with an opioid response team. The troubles and difficulties with an opioid response team is when these overdoses do occur, the first people on scene is law enforcement. When Narcan is administered and the person that overdosed starts to come around, your window of opportunity with them, if there's no physical arrest going to be made, is small. Once EMS clears them and we have no legal right to hold them any longer, our contact points with them are smaller. So the county is very large. So to get an opioid response team to an active overdose is a challenge. It's a challenge. The county understands that. The only way to combat that is to put these opioid response teams throughout the entire county, and they would have to respond when law enforcement responded. So they would have to get some level of immediate notification. Again, another large task to put that back end together. But it's in there, and I know the county was talking about that. So focusing on the similar strategies that connect at-risk individuals to behavioral health services and support. Officer Jandrick and I started working on this one, and we came up with the connection of Sage's Army. And with Officer Jandrick's help, we set up a meeting with Sage's Army, and we had a very productive meeting with 3 members of Sage's Army. Sage's Army counts as a recovery community organization. And we just built our first bridge with Sage's Army. They're very excited about the potential to work with our department and for Officer Jandrick to maybe start attending some of their meetings and start becoming familiar with how they operate. The basis of this thought process is fostering that relationship with Sage's Army is to get information out to the people that are at need, are at risk. Our officers are on the front lines. We're the ones that are dealing with them on a daily basis. We're a good vessel for this. They need our help. We need their help. I love the partnership with them. And like I said, we did strike up a very good first meeting, and I think everybody left there with good vibes. And I think that there's a lot of potential to grow the partnership as we start figuring out what we can and can't do and how much money we're going to receive and how long of a term we're going to receive the funding. So the DARE program then became intriguing to me. So Officer Jandrick reached out to Officer Fontaine, and then we had a meeting in my office, and we discussed the DARE program, and we discussed how he does it at the McKeesport School District and how it works at the McKeesport School District and the impact that it's having. Then went over and I asked for a meeting with the school administrator. So I met with Dr. McCracken and Dr. Taylor. And I gave them the pitch and on how I believe that this could work using our opioid funding, us funding our DARE program, us funding the training and the engagement and all of that. They were very, very interested. They needed the research DARE because, again, everybody believed the old DARE program. So it's the new DARE program, the evidence-based portion of the program. And Dr. Taylor did a lot of extensive research on it and was very excited about where DARE's at now and the impact that it could make. So really what I'm pitching today is what I'd like to do so that we can secure our funding is use the opioid money that we're going to receive and create a full-time community engagement position. During the school year, we would be involved with DARE. And DARE has expanded to be on just one grade. It has an elementary component, it has an intermediate component, a middle school component, a high school component. It also has a community component to it now, and it also has a parental component to it. So it's a pretty diverse program as we believe we could expand this program. We would also then build our partnership with Sages Army. We would build our community engagements. We may even work with any type of social programs in Westmoreland County once they start establishing what they want to do. It would all fall under community engagement, and the way that I see that we could do it is we could take the funding, take the position of community engagement with DARE, with Sages Army, and fund it full-time 365, one position using the opioid funds. So that's my pitch on how I feel that I see that we can use it. If we don't choose to engage this position, I'm not certain after reading this how else we can use our money. And by this way, we get to use our money and make an impact in our community with our kids and the people that are in need. Any questions? Officer Fontaine would be willing to talk about the DARE program a little bit. I actually would like him to say a few words about how it's working for him in the Norwood School District, if that would be fine. Officer Fontaine.
As Chief Rizzo said, I'm Officer Fontaine. Everybody calls me Officer Marty. With the White Oak Police Department, I am our DARE officer for the McKeesport School District. It's actually my first year doing DARE. I'm certified to teach K through 12, including the community and the parental program. In McKeesport, we focus on 5th grade. Our school district's structured a little bit different than that of Norwin. We do 5th grade because once they get to 6th grade, that's when our kids go to the big school and their life is changing and they're switching classes every period, everything like that. The DARE program has been in McKeesport for close to 30 years, 25, 30 years. And like Chief Rizzo was saying, the old DARE program, a lot of people wasn't too happy with it. They did a lot of research. When you tell kids to not do something so many times, they're going to go out and do it anyway. So they went and they revamped the program in about 2000, I think it was 2015, and now they call it the Keeping It Real program. So now we teach kids responsible decision making on top of drug awareness. So now we're teaching the kids, we're teaching them about bullying. We're teaching them how to make safe, responsible decisions. We're teaching them who to call for help. We're teaching them the difference between good drugs and bad drugs and what can make a good drug a bad drug. Throughout the 5th grade curriculum, it's a 10-week curriculum. So when I teach it, we have 2 K through 5 schools, so I teach 10 or 11 5th grade classes 2 days a week. So Tuesdays I'm at one school and Thursdays I'm at the other. It's a 10-week program, and throughout that 10 weeks, it's called the DARE decision making model. Where the kids are learning how to responsibly make their own decisions for certain things that they might find themselves involved with at 11 years old or even beyond, whether it is peer pressure, drug use, alcohol use, abuse at home, things like that. It's no secret McKeesport is a very unique place, but the kids, my 5th grade kids absolutely love the program. I see these kids out in public all the time. It's Officer Marty, it's Officer Marty. My house is smack dab middle of a neighborhood, so the kids see me cutting my grass or washing the car or playing with my dog, and hey, Officer Marty, like, can we talk about lesson that we went over last week? So the kids absolutely love it. The families, to my knowledge, we have had not one family withdraw their kid from the DARE program ever. So it's a very successful program in McKeesport. It's very challenging, obviously, because it's McKeesport, but we think it does a lot of good. We think it knocks our problems down by more than half, or saves us from our problems for more than half, just going through this program. The DARE program, they'll be revamping it again in another couple years, so it'll probably be expanding even further than what it does now. I think back when I was in 5th grade, I think they only did K through 5 DARE. Now it's K through 12, a community program, and then there's a parental program. So there's more than enough in the DARE program for the kids, for Officer Jandrick, and members of the community that'll be able to utilize this program that's only growing and getting better. A lot of the research through DARE is done through the Surgeon General, the United States Surgeon General, so a lot of that comes from them on top of just like the bigger police departments, LAPD, NYPD, Chicago, things like that. So it's all fact-based, it's all scientific-based, and then it's a pretty successful program now, so.
Thank you. The timeframe is what I need to do next is if the board and would agree that this would be a good position that we want to go after. This is a direction we would like to go. I would need to go to the Norwin School Board next. So I've already talked to administration, and they would need me to go and speak to their board. And then if their board is on, agree, then we would need to sit down with administration. And I was looking to do this in the fall semester of this year, which means we would have to find our DARE training, get Officer Jandrick certified over the summer. Again, the opioid funding, when's the funding coming in? I know the county has had money from last year that hasn't been distributed yet. Am I correct, Commissioner Zona? I'm not sure.
Yeah, believe me, I know way more about this than I want to know.
I know you do.
What I was going to ask you is there a deadline to request that from the county, to request your funds?
I don't know.
Because
That's
what we have to look at.
Bruce might know,
Yeah.
or Harry's been working on it a little bit. We're trying to get an answer.
Yeah, and that's what we have to look at. And just real briefly, this opioid settlement here was the first one. That's against the opioid manufacturers. The second one that's coming is against the drugstores.
Yes,
So,
CVS and
yeah,
I think it was
CVS, Walmart, all
think it
that.
was, yeah.
This first one, and I know I believe it's spread out over a 17-year period.
It is.
Yeah, so we will get paid every year for 17 years in that settlement. Now, just as the chief said, the county went out and met with these 11 municipalities that qualify for opioid money, and basically showed you Schedule E and told you if you can fit something in there. And that was the end of it. Nobody else reached out to you. Now, when I checked about 2 weeks ago, not one municipality that's eligible had reached out to request their money. So that's why I'm just worried about the time limits with the county, that we make sure, because I think this is a good use of the money.
I do too.
And if we don't request it to come back here, the county gets that money, and
Right.
they're putting it all toward treatment recovery,
Right.
which is needed, but I think this is needed too.
Yeah, if I can't do law enforcement prevention, then I want to try to do community
Mm-hmm.
prevention, and I think the kids are the prime spot. I think this is a good opportunity. you know, to fund this program, to fund an officer in a full-time position and take it on. I mean, I envision, we talked about the curriculum and the number of weeks per curriculum. I envision a 5th grade curriculum. I envision an elementary curriculum. I envision a high school curriculum. We talked about doing community-based engagement through the DARE program with the parents. So I look at us trying to, you know, once we get Officer Jandrick trained and certified, I look at us as grabbing the entire package they have to offer and using it year-round in a 365. So that's my thought process.
I like it. I would just suggest maybe reach out to Rob Hamilton with the county tomorrow, because he's the one kind of spearheading this, and let him know, okay, just so they know that this is coming, so we don't miss a deadline and not be able to receive our funds.
Yeah, I've been talking to Melissa
Okay.
Giddy, the solicitor.
Yeah, the solicitor, okay.
I've put a lot of work into it, trying to have the money stay in the municipality. I was disappointed greatly that, you know, because we take the front end of our, you know, our responsibility in trying to prevent the drugs. We take that very seriously, as you're all aware, and what we do with the Attorney General's office and, you know, the successes we have there. So I was a little slightly disappointed we couldn't do that, but I think this is the best uses that I could find. Reading this, this applies, and this could be a very good thing. And Officer Jandrick's the right choice. She's our community engagement officer. I know we've had extensive conversations. She wrote an entire 2-page job description on how she sees the community engagement position expanding, and it'll obviously be an ongoing, and it will grow with it once we learn more and we get involved in it more, and then she gets more in depth and she receives some additional training. She's going to be going to critical incident training coming up in June. So we're already starting to expand her training repertoire a little bit to get her prepared for what's coming. Any questions? Does anybody want to hear what Officer Jandrick has to say? I've said her name 50 times.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, first, I want to thank Chief Rizzo for, you know, allowing me the opportunity to even have this position be brought forth to you guys. And I know you guys have came to some of my events. That's one thing that I really pride myself in when I got into law enforcement. I'm really big in the community aspect of things. You know, I think just talking to like one person and doing something with the community, you can make a huge change in, you know, the outcome and how people look at police officers as a whole. You know, I think every police department has their little groups of officers that, you know, are successful in what they do and what they don't do. And mine, I just gravitate towards the community aspect of things. Especially with how the world's going these days, I think community policing is really important, on top of, you know, drug prevention. And that's an ongoing issue too. When we were talking to Sage's Army, there's a lot of drugs coming in from Philadelphia right now that are even stronger than fentanyl. And they said it was like shaped in anything, like any type of candy that you could think of. It looks like it. So that's one thing I do think is very important, and I just want to thank you guys for taking it into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank you for the work you did do, Officer Jandrick, with the Citizens Police Academy. That was very nice. You did an awesome job, and with the leadership of the chief, your guys did an awesome job on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Proud to have you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like we have a winner here. I think we can do good things with this and use that money, you know, for our community. So, any other questions?
I just have one. Go ahead, Jason.
So my question is, you said this grant money will fund the position. How long will this position be funded for?
Well, as Commissioner Zona just said, the first lawsuit, I think, is funded over 17 years. So we'll be receiving funding annually.
That's the total amount is spread out for 17
Right.
years in that, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it says the article in the Trib is what I'm actually quoting on here. It says that the 11 largest municipalities last year signed on to the first phase of $22 million to local governments over a 17-year period. So I don't know how the percentages are broken down. I don't know if it goes by population or by size. Those are things that I have not had an opportunity to research yet. But just doing the math, I mean, we're looking at, probably a significant amount of money on an annually basis. I'm going to guess over about $200,000 annually, which would more than fund Officer Jandrick's position for a year, the DARE program, the literature and the material, any type of advertising that we would want to do with the program, any relationship that we build with Sage's Army and anything that we would need to do to foster that. I think we would have more than enough funding to do those things. And it's, I mean, we're talking almost, over about 20 years. So,
And not to mention, we just voted to sign on to the second
On to the second
lawsuit, so
one.
there's gonna be a settlement coming out of that too.
Right.
No one knows what the amounts are now, but there will be a settlement
I
there.
got to get to work on that one now.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
I just want to say thank you for investigating that.
You're welcome.
And taking such an interest in the community, and Officer Marty, for you coming to our
Yes.
meeting. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, I appreciate his help. I mean, he came up here and, met with us, met with Anna, met with her, met with myself, and kind of gave us some guidance on how this could all work. So, it was nice having a next-door neighbor in White Oak to be able to kind of lean on and help build what we want to do. So, yeah, we do appreciate that. And his chief's a North Huntington guy, so it's a good thing.
And my only question was, what do you think we would get annually for, maybe have no idea yet?
Yeah,
just
I
for what
think
we
the
would
manager
push.
Falk has been in contact with the county. And like I said, I don't know what the percentage disbursements are.
Yeah.
We are talking a significant amount of money. So I honestly believe it'll probably be more than enough for us to
To
fund.
fund the
Yeah.
program.
And
Okay.
long-term annual funding.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I appreciate the work for you and the officers, and I'd be interested to see what kind of agreement we could get to with, be looking at with the school district as far as that too.
Right. Yeah, my next step is to call Dr. Taylor back, speak with him, and then he would get me on the agenda. They have 2 board meetings coming up, Monday, and then I think the following Monday. I think they have back-to-back meetings. So the likelihood is that I would probably be in front of them for one of those 2 meetings, and then we would be discussing that, and their concerns if they have any.
And I would even suggest that we ask the county for a certain amount of money out of that, because a lot of those municipalities, we may be the only one that requested, but Hempfield doesn't have a police department. They can't take that money and use it. Unity Township can't take that money. Mount Pleasant Township can't take that money. So there's a big pot of money there. So I would just write up an amount and request it, that's my suggestion.
And I can do that. I mean, I can work with Manager Falk, and I would have to work with DARE. So the next step would be for Officer Janik to reach out with DARE, look for the training, which, we could fund the training, we could fund the materials. I'd have to get like an overall cost. That would be next thing, is really building a budget. And what a budget would look like annually with the officer, the cost, the outreach, the partnerships. We could start that next. So that's something that'll be our next phase. Once the school district kind of gives us a thumbs up, hopefully maybe I'll be in front of them by Monday evening. I think we start on budgeting next. All good?
Sounds good. Thank you, Chief.
Oh, you're
Thank you,
welcome.
officers.
Thank you so very much. I'm gonna let these guys get out.
That is all I have, Chair.
All right, thank you. Planning and engineering topics, Director Fonzie.
Yes, at the Planning Commission meeting last week, we had one plan come through for approval. It is the Stark Leader Singer subdivision and lot consolidation. This is located between Route 30 and Ward Drive. In the photo there, that's Stewartsville School, so this property is on the eastern side of Stewartsville there. And Stark Investment Properties owns 3.33 acres. That's the green parcel right there. What he would like to do is split that lot and sell it to the 2 property owners on Route 30. So Bill Leader, Leader Properties LLC owns 2.15 acres. That's the blue parcel. And James Singer has 2 properties totaling 1.49 acres. So with this splitting of the Stark lot and appending to the Route 30 lots, you have the resulting, the Leader lot would be 3.15 acres, and the Singer lot would be 3.82 acres. The reasoning for this is I know that at least one of the property owners wants to propose a development on Route 30, but in order to do that, they have to bring in some fill, and you cannot grade within 5 feet of a neighboring property line. So essentially, they want to eliminate the property line behind them to increase the footprint of the proposed development. One other thing to note is there would be a zoning line going through the two new lots, the two proposed lots. So the red portion there is the highway commercial C1 zoning district, and the orange is the residential, the R2. So any commercial development on those properties would have to remain actually on the commercial part, whereas, you know, anything commercial could not exist on the residential portion of that property. Grading would be an exception because you can grade on a residential property. So this is what it looks like. The Planning Commission approved it 6-0. And any questions on that?
Yeah, so unfortunately I do. So Ward 7, sorry to keep everybody here, that is in Ward 7. I'm concerned about the high tension wires. We're talking massive high tension wires. I thought there is a ruling based on the Lager property that we talked about, industrial going residential, that, you know, you're not allowed to be under the wires.
Right, the high tension wire is north of this property. It's here with the right-of-way kind of going off of this property. It's not really on top of this property.
It's not.
No.
Okay, what about the house that the folks
Down here?
below? Yeah, how much buffer are they gonna have? Because I'm sure they're not gonna want,
So they're down here, but they're still completely surrounded by that residential portion.
yeah,
So if anything, there's going to be, you know, potentially fill brought in, which there already has been some fill on this property. I'm not sure what the plans on this property are. We haven't seen anything yet. There's no grading permits, no development plans, so this is just rearranging the property lines.
what about in the residential area, the yellow area? Are there grading that will take place in there?
Potentially, yes, which is permitted.
Which is permitted?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And I know that's a sensitive area with some stormwater issues
Yes, it
in the
is for those
past.
folks.
So that would definitely be part of the grading permit, is to control that stormwater that would be coming off of there.
Yeah, because right now, the family that lives there has all that woods to absorb a lot of that rain.
Mm-hmm.
If those woods and that stuff goes away, that's a rush of water.
Right.
What are we gonna do to mitigate so they don't get flooded out again?
Yeah, and that would have to be an approval with any land development that would
Okay.
come through.
Can we keep that family in the talks with this? So they know that there's not that fear of them getting flooded out again?
I mean, yeah, they're free to,
Okay,
you know, attend a meeting or look at our agendas.
all right. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? That's all I
All
have.
right, thank you, Director Franzi. Any further board comments? If not, I just need a motion.
Motion to adjourn? Second.
Discussion?
Wait, I have one thing to say. I'm sorry. We met with a couple of members from Public Works, maybe like a month or so ago, and they had, I don't know if I can say. It's just about a first aid kit. Can we get a first aid kit ordered for Public Works? Okay,
Get that ordered tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other?
Hey, yeah,
further board
Harry,
comment?
Lindsay, do they also need an AED down there?
Yep, we're gonna get that order too whenever we order the AED, and we need some for the parks as well. So when we get the AED for the grant, we're gonna purchase a few more, so we're up to speed on everything.
How do we prevent the park ones from not getting stolen?
As far as I know, none of them have been stolen. The only issue with the park AEDs is they're exposed to the elements of the pads, the gel in the pads itself
Yeah.
would dry out over a period of time, or dry out a lot quicker,
Okay.
so.
Huh. Does that open us up to a lawsuit?
I would not think so.
Hope not.
Any other
All right.
board discussion? Have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor by state and aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Meeting adjourned.